Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Sunday the 28th of November 2021, and we're looking at what is happening to silver and gold this past week and what we may expect next week. So let's take a look. This past week, we saw gold fall some $53 from $1,846 to $1,793, having been as high as $1,849 and as low as $1,779. For the week, it fell some 2.8%. Now, silver fell $1.46, falling from $24.61 to $23.15. It having hit a high of $24.91 and a low of $22.94. Silver fell 6% last week, a sharp contrast to gold's 2.8% and causing the gold to silver ratio to rise from 75 to 1 to 77.5 to 1. Now, admittedly, other assets fell too, most of them in fact. The Dow Jones was down 702 points, the S&P down 103, and the Nasdaq Composite was down 566 points on the week. Even Bitcoin was down over $3,416. Oil prices too were lower, with Brent crude closing $6.17 down and WTI crude falling $7.79 on the week. Meanwhile, the dollar, although strengthening, was down on its week's high, and the dollar index only closed up 0.05 for the week. So what actually happened, and where might we see silver moving this coming week, we all ask? Well, first of all, we have to take into account there are a number of factors which determine precious metal prices. You have fundamentals, of course, such as supply and demand, and you have speculation in the futures markets. Paper contracts, at least short-term, because of leverage, far outweigh pressures both up and down than the physical dealing in silver. The value of the US dollar therefore has a significant effect both on fundamentals as well as the technicals. Geopolitical events and economic data also impact prices based on traders' opinions as to where they see prices heading. There is, of course, a degree of manipulation by trading banks and whales manipulating the paper price, especially affecting calls and puts or shorts and longs, but we also see this in equity markets as well, and the crypto markets too, which will become even more pronounced as more futures exchanges are created for that asset class. Also, the movement of alternative asset classes also have a bearing. We've seen, for example, the cryptocurrency market rise to a current market capitalization of $2.5 trillion, much of which would have undoubtedly have gone into precious metals, but instead demand has been hijacked by the cryptos. The prospect of higher interest rates following a reduction in central bank QE programs are also having a potential adverse effect on precious metal prices. However, that said, we believe it's fair to say that perhaps one of the largest catalysts driving silver down currently is the prospect of economic growth, which has begun to materialize post the COVID pandemic, may be jeopardized as a new variant, a new COVID variant being discovered, is causing governmental and health service panic, which could lead to further lockdowns, restrictions on travel, and therefore jeopardize not only the recent growth trends, but may actually sink the world economy into recession or further recession, depending how you value it. You see, although silver may benefit from any increase in monetary demand for the metal, we have to bear in mind that anywhere from 50 to 60% of its physical demand is usually for industrial purposes. And if this is jeopardized, then silver will certainly underperform gold and more than likely actually decline in price, which is what we're witnessing now. Currently, we have what would normally be a panacea for gold and silver. Rising inflation, low interest rates, a growing economy, and yet we see their prices constantly under pressure, with a possibility that we may see both gold and silver retrench, and silver particularly as the prospect of higher rates loom large, whilst the economy takes a dive. We could find ourselves in the worst of all worlds. Now, this coming week we have some important economic data being published by the United States, with a significant focus on Wednesday and Friday. On Wednesday we have the ADP employment report for November, which will give us a guide, not a guarantee, but a guide to the non-farm payrolls on Friday. But we also have the market and ISM manufacturing final PMIs for November. Then on Friday, non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate, average hourly earnings, all for November, plus the market and ISM services PMIs for November too. On the technical front, we have support for gold at the 50-day moving average of $1,790, though we see this as being too close for comfort, and frankly would prefer to rely on the much frequently visited $1,750 level underneath. We have resistance at the 10-day moving average of 1825. Now for silver, we have strong resistance at or near the 24.50 level and tepid support at $23. And frankly would not be surprised if we saw silver heading for $22 again. Geopolitically, we still have to keep an eye on Russia and Ukraine and continuing tensions between the US and China. In addition, there are threats by the EU for sanctions on Russia, which will also add some spice to prices in the coming weeks. We could see that last week, silver was in almost permanent decline from Monday onwards, and the news announcement about the new COVID variant simply sealed its fate. Where a price is likely to go this coming week will depend in large part to how markets perform on Monday's opening, and whether the fear and likelihood of further lockdowns are estimated to thwart future economic growth, plus the data being published later in the week, which will give us an idea on the trajectory the US economy is currently embarked upon. Needless to say, silver is not out of the woods yet, and whilst we should be seeing a resurgence, we suspect silver will move range-bound, but within a relatively wide spectrum of a few dollars, and possibly early on towards the lower end of that spectrum. On that basis, we envisage silver next week really trading between 22 at the lower end and 25 at the upper end, but would not be surprised in the least to see if in the coming weeks it will even dip as low as $20. Should the fear spread and further lockdowns are introduced across Europe, the UK and the Western world in general. There are already a number initiated in China, and other countries are considering their policies too. What do you think? Do share your thoughts. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel, press the bell sign so you're notified of our videos as and when they're published. And yesterday we provided our weekly roundup, and we've attached a link below in case you haven't listened to that one. Tomorrow morning we shall have our morning update, and then perhaps get a better idea of how markets are likely to respond to this rather negative news that was highly published on Friday. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.